Sean. Thank you everyone for being here. My name is Allison Pellegrin. I'm a Louisiana Poet Laureate, and I'm happy to be talking with you today about the work I've been lucky enough to do inside of Louisiana prisons, doing poetry workshops. With me are people who've all had the chance to come to prisons with me. We've got Christopher Romagera, Bernardo Wade, and Alex Trekbar. So thank you all so much for agreeing to do this panel. Thanks also to the New Orleans Poetry Festival. This project was the recipient of a Poet Laureate grant from the Academy of American Poets, and the New Orleans Poetry Festival is my partner in this endeavor, and they've been so wonderful. So thank you all to them, Sean, Bill, Jonathan, and all of this is from the Academy of American Poets. Money comes through the Mellon Foundation, so I want to be sure and acknowledge them. And now I want to jump into the fun part, which is how I got to do this incredible and life-changing work. I was invited to Angola State Prison last year, the week of Mardi Gras, so it was after Mardi Gras. I think I still had glitter in my hair. And I take the trip there and arrive from feathers and brightness into a black and white world, literally because of the colors, but also it was an overcast day, and it was quite a physical reminder of the type of reality I was going to be entering. I didn't know what to expect, but I definitely did not expect to enter into this old, rickety kind of library in the main prison and to find joy happening there. That's not what I expected. But I met this group of people who were incredibly educated, passionate, kind, generous poets. And I get asked about this a lot. It was like teaching the first day of class of the best class you're ever going to teach. That's what it was like. We all connected immediately, and then my favorite thing happened, which is, I know this happens for poets and all artists. That's when we fall out of time, through creating and focus and concentration. Time is suspended and you're just in the now. I'm kind of a junkie for that feeling, and I definitely felt it that day at Angola. So right during that moment, I decided that I was going to use the laureateship and this platform they tell me that I have. I was going to use that to visit as many different prisons as I could inside of the state where we could lead poetry workshops. And the idea kind of evolved from that point. I was very naive, because I just thought you would call up the warden and ask if you could do a poetry workshop, and then they would say yes. And guess what? It's not that way at all. It was extremely difficult for me to not break my way inside, but to finagle my way to a visit. I would go to any place where I knew I would see people from DOC. I would be sure to go and introduce myself and kind of make sure I was going up the chain, getting their emails or phone numbers of the right people I needed to be in touch with. I had help from unlikely places. My university president at Southeastern is friends with the warden at Rayburn Correctional Facility in Angie, and he was bringing a group of people from Southeastern there to talk about setting up a drama program, which they did do. And I kind of tagged along on that trip, and that's how they also got poetry at Rayburn. So it's little things like that. But as much of a hassle as it is, it doesn't quite matter, because once you're in that room, everything changes. I'll tell you the way I've come to lead a poetry workshop. I'll bring in a 2-page worksheet like this that has poems and prompts on it. I also started putting little snippets of Ars Poetica by the poets that were on the sheet, because it was a really great way for us to start the conversation and to talk about our writing practice and our writing lives. So we always had fruitful conversation. If any of you all are teachers in here, have you ever had the experience of writing your stuff on the board or what people are saying out in class? I always write it on the board, and then I take a picture of the board after with my cell phone, so I can remember all the brilliant things that my students said, but of course you can't do that inside of a prison. So I had to learn to start taking notes. And I would bring note cards with me. So if the poets I was working with wanted to share their work on the outside, they could give those cards to me. And anytime I do this work in a community, I bring the same prompts that I use inside of a prison. They're age appropriate. I mean, you know, it's for any age, and I think that's important as well. There's a website which I update infrequently. It's called lifelinespoetryproject.com, but I have a blog there, and you can read about some of these experiences. My whole life, I felt like I'm trying to get others to look at something only I could see. And it's always involving birds, and I can tell you there's two groups of people who looked when I was pointing. One was my son, when on one Mardi Gras we were on Canal Street and I saw that flock of green parrots that rests in the trees. I know some of you all probably seen them. And I was standing in the street, pointing up and saying ooh, 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 which I think is the language of poetry. And the only person who paid any attention to me, other than the people that were parting the waters, I think they thought I was having issues, was my son, who looked up and saw those birds with me. And the next time I was in a group like that, it was the poetry group in Angola. We were at a break, someone had procured coffee cake, or carrot cake, and we were looking out of the window because we had seen a bird fly by. And you know how it is with birds, you see them once and you're just waiting to see them again. So we were all standing there, eating our carrot cake out of a nacho tray, waiting for the bird to pass by the window. And if that's not a metaphor for poetry and art, I don't know what is. Poetry can't change Louisiana's shameful distinction as the incarceration capital of the world. It can't erase the racial inequities, the overcrowding inside of our prisons. It cannot erase the fact that children inside of our juvenile detention centers are facing adult sentences. It can't erase the degrading spectacle of the Angola prison rodeo or the fallout of violence. Because poetry technically is nothing, right? It's nothing, but it's also everything. It flies beneath the radar and nests in razor wire. It's portable, above suspicion, and in a world of control, it is the one thing that you own, the bird in your hand, a God that serves us all. So thank you all for coming here to listen to us talk about this today. I want to point out that I've got some posters made up. These are prison cento sonnets. So they're made up of lines of poetry written by incarcerated writers that were shared with me. And maybe as these members up here who are going to talk about their experiences as we did this work, maybe you could also read one of the poems. That would be great. I have a box of these right behind the video camera, and I would love it if you took one or all so that you could share them with people who you think might be interested in this work or who might benefit from it. I welcome that. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all for having me. Thank you all for being here. And thank you, Allison, for including me in Lifelines. I first came into teaching in prisons through UNO. They had a program. Oh, can you hear me better now? Yeah. I'm used to being loud enough. I first came into teaching in prisons through UNO. UNO had a program through Dr. Stevie where we would go and teach at like OPP, but it's rebranded as Orleans Justice Center or whatever. But I think it's just, especially here in Louisiana, because we are in a country that is the mass incarceration capital of the world, but we are also in the state that is the mass incarceration capital of the world. And if the original sin of this country is enslavement, the continuing of that is going to be incarceration. You know, to be able to do this work is very important. I mean, it's very fulfilling. Like, I'm not gonna, when you get there with the students, but to be able to navigate and to the wardens, the prison guards, to know are not easy. And to be able to do this work once you get there, it is as fulfilling as any class I've taught in, as any class I've been a student in. And so, yeah, like yesterday we were at the memorial, or a lot of us were at the memorial for Dr. Ward, and there was a line I read from his Katrina papers I revisited yesterday about watching the Spike Lee documentary When the Levee Breaks, and he says, I know I'm in the eye of the storm, what am I seeing? And that feels like such the perfect example of like what poetry is, trying to explain what you're seeing when there's no other way to explain it. Prison is as surreal as anything in this country, and so to be able to bring poetry in there to a class and group of people that have been stripped of everything else, and to give them something that they cannot be stripped from. Everyone in this room can recite a poem. Anyone, to be able to give that gift to someone who's incarcerated is just so important. I don't want to take up any more time, so I do want to read one of these centos, and then I'll pass the mic on. The clock can't save me from this prison sonnet. Let me stand and smile. Will listening unlock the mystery? My mind is stuck on one page. Today I'm feeling dark and want no one to see me. Hurting people can lose hope here behind these walls. Part prison, part daycare center, dreaming of the cool grass. The spatters of rain have nowhere to be. I am the private thought made public. It is coming. I can feel the wind blowing on my face. The drums of my heartbeat troubles will be over soon. I hope it gives me rest. I am nobody. I see myself in you.
All right, can y'all hear me? All right, I'm Bernardo. Whoa, okay, there we go. I was sitting here trying to think about how I started doing work like this. And, you know, my life, I was arrested probably 5 times before I did anything good for a prison, right, or a jail. So I did touch like that part of it before I ever touched like what it meant to be, you know, a good person. Or what does it mean to reach a spot in your life where you've realized maybe you've done some damage in your past and now you want to put forward a good foot, right? And there's a real big problem with the endeavor of being a good person. And I hope some people in here can relate. But the moment I said, I want to be a good person, people started asking me to do shit. And no, and low-key, I think this happens to a lot of y'all. But I think a lot of us say no. But the good thing about whatever little situation I was in when this happened was, I kind of thought my life depended on being that good person. And so, I'm trying to look back. You know, I've done a few things within the prison systems now, and I'm trying to think how those things happen. And I'm gonna be, if I were completely honest, those things happened throughout no doing of my own. Those things came to me. And when they came to me, I knew I only had one answer, and that answer was yes. So when someone came to me and wanted to do an incarcerated folio for the Indiana Review, even though I didn't necessarily trust they were going to do a diligent job, I said, look, I'll jump in, and I said yes. When Sean wants to do a reading in Angola, I jump at the spot. Why? Because I remember when Ross sat me down in my MFA, and he says, yo, B, why are you writing poems? Why? And I was like, I think I'm writing for my people. Well, there's some duty to that. So again, look, if Stanford asked me to do a reading, I'm gonna go do it. What, for the prestige? Are my people in that room? I don't think so. I'm gonna be real or not. There's more of my people in this room than that room. There's more of my people in Angola than that room. That's why I went. So when I'm at Stanford and they go, oh, you want to do a little prison? Yeah. Yeah. Do I really, like, yo, low key, do I really want to do it? No, I want to walk around and do my own thing, I promise. But at that moment when I say, yo, I'm gonna endeavor to be this thing, my duty is at least to say yes, right? And that doesn't mean I ain't go through all the little anxieties and fears and shit everybody else might go through if you said yes to that. You don't think my mind wandered to the worst case scenario? Absolutely. And then you get there and you realize that it's real and all your little anxieties were fake. And these are people and they're fucking awesome and they're willing and they're more willing than any of those stupid fucking kids I've taught at school. Any of the little IU, whatever. So yeah, it's a no-brainer. All right, I'm gonna leave it there, thank you. Oh, hold on, I gotta read the thing. Let's see, exactly, all about me. Look. There's a reason y'all became poets, I promise. We love the mirror, y'all. All right. Search for the keys always, and forgive my fears. The dark pushes through blocking out what's right. I walk down the walkway, creep forth on little paws. I don't regret the steps. Cars drive by without me. I know I'm someone. I am he who won the race in silence. Count me all the reasons why. I long for life. I am here. My mind is still free. With dead eyes, the chains jingle.
Howdy, y'all. Can you hear me? Yeah. All right. My name's Alex, and just to give some context why I'm on this stage today, I did a little over 5 years in the state of Oregon. I was homeless on the streets of Portland in 2016, addicted to heroin and meth, and ended up in prison in Oregon. And before prison, my background was in journalism, copywriting, all that stuff, and I wasn't interested in journalism when I landed in jail. But I knew I wanted to write. And what I found pretty quickly is that, let's say you want to be like a botanist. Let's say you are a botanist and you go to prison. You're gonna have a hard time practicing what you love to do in prison. You might be able to get a garden job, but writing requires very little in the way of technology. And so to be a writer in prison, I mean, it's not lucky to be in prison, but if you're in prison, you're lucky to be a writer. I think that's why a lot of people end up writing in prison. It's something anyone can do. You need a pen. I mean, you get to jail and they give you a free pen and a free pad. I mean, it's free from day one. So, so I started writing poems again. You know, I grew up writing. I wanted to be a fiction writer as a kid, but poems seemed more immediate to my situation, and so I was writing a lot of poems early on in jail. And I gradually met more writers and built community. And eventually we started a creative writing program at Deer Ridge Correctional Institution in Oregon. I had some friends and mentors from Oregon State University come in, help me facilitate that. And I'll just echo what folks have been saying here. People in prison are the best students you can find. They do the reading, for one. They show up. And they're funny, they're humble, and to speak to the green parrots anecdote, then kind of like the children thing. In prison classrooms, there is this. People in prison are especially responsive to play, to a sense of play in the sandbox, and so I've always tried to kind of maintain that even after getting out of prison. But yeah, we went to Engel a couple days ago, and I think probably the most moving moment was after we'd finished the reading. The incarcerated folks had brought poems on pages and were coming up to give them to us, and they were autographing them. And we had come in there, the only thing we were allowed to bring in was our poems, I mean, Tongo didn't bring his because he doesn't need paper, but so we started signing our poems too, and trading with the incarcerated folks. So I'm just honored. I was honored to go in there. I'm honored to be on this stage, And yeah, I'll just read this poem. This world has haunted my being all my life. I see the blackbirds fly and am jealous of their wings. The present is the only place that makes any sense. The smell of diesel on the water, the gray-green of the bayou, the owl, little minnows in the ditch. I see the mirage. I am not wise or relevant. Fenced-in aggression ripples up and down my body. Wherever I go, there's a gate to unlock, shackled away from knowing. I am the red sinking sun. See the smoke flying from my shoes.
Thank you all for reading those poems. Each time I spent, it was the work of love putting those together, cutting up the lines and spreading them all out and trying to make poems out of them. And when I read them, when I hear you all read them, I can see the people, I can see the people who wrote these lines, and just think of the fun we had, or maybe how sad they were. So they really mean a lot to me. And again, I want to remind you that these are on posters that I have that are free for the taking at the back. And I also have a table out front with more if we happen to run out of here. I wanted to tell you that I've been able to visit 10 prisons, many of them multiple times, and 2 juvenile detention centers in the year that I've been doing this. So I'm happy to report that. And I also wanted to say that be sure you reach out to me and get my phone number or my contact information, because it was so difficult for me to do the work of having the doors open and being able to get inside. And the only reason I was able to do that is because other people were helping me, introducing me to people I needed to know, inviting me to go to things where I was going to meet so-and-so who could give me this email and all of those things. And now that I have all of that information, it's absolutely public and I'm open to share it. Because the thing I think about more than anything is how will I continue this work outside of the laureateship. I love it very much and very deeply, and I'm committed to continuing it. So I think we can open up for questions now or conversation, and be sure to grab a plate. I know Bernardo only had a Heath bar for breakfast. So we would welcome questions, and if I can't see you, just kind of speak up, shout it out. Luckily, there's no question. Oh, Poetic Soul Johnson. Yes. Well, I mean, it's a one-woman show, and I'm the woman, okay? And sometimes I'm allowed to bring people, and sometimes I'm not. It just kind of depends. But just be sure we swap information, okay? And thank you. Yes? What kind of response do I get from the incarcerated people? Well, it's like everyone's very excited to be there. It's fun. When I go into a prison and we write, the favorite thing to me seems to be when everyone gets to share their work and everyone's sharing eagerly. I've managed to remember to bring in a file folder every time I go, because I'll take notes on what comes up in our conversation or what kind of poets the men are interested in. It's usually men, sometimes women. And that way I can make a follow-up sheet for them with those poets on it, and some of them talking about writing, like an Ars Poetica, like I said before. And I'll send that to the warden or the education person so that it can be distributed. And then if I'm able to do a follow-up visit, I'll either try to bring books by that person or something. So it's really catered to each individual audience that I've had the chance to meet. There was so much interest that I started doing 2 sessions now when I go, so because they won't let you have a group that's too large. 33 was the largest group that I had. And it's hard just to be direct and connect with every single person when it's 33 people. But especially if I have someone with me, I can do 2 groups of 30 or more. Megan Holt wasn't able to be here today, but she's the one who came with me to the Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women, where we had the most delightful day imaginable. And we had 2 huge groups who were interested, and we'll be going back there in September. So the reaction is always great. And something else I didn't realize until I started doing this was that often it seems that the group is kind of hand-picked, like the quote-unquote best or the quote-unquote good or whatever. And so I always ask the warden to do an open call so that anyone who's interested in poetry can come. I don't care if they have their high set or their degree. I don't care about any of that. Just come and we will work it out. I've had poets who were not literate but who could do sign language, so they could do their poems in American Sign Language while speaking them, which is great. So, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh, you're my best friend that I met today. Okay.
So I pretty much touched upon the question that I was going to ask that I was first say, and going back to what Bernardo said. Bernardo,
yes.
It takes a certain group of people to go to a prison and to deliver any type of instruction or any type of art to those who are incarcerated. So the yes is so important and it resonates. So if you say that yes, I'm so glad that Allison was the yes for this project. It's an amazing thing. So I just, blessings to all of you. But my question was with the laureateship, how, I was hoping that it would continue beyond, right? And you said that you wanted to. How can people support you in order for that effort, especially if they're not from Louisiana? Because I'm not from Boston Wood. So how could that happen and so y'all can continue to work?
I don't know. I mean, it would help if I had like a donation thing or whatever. But I mean, I'm supported now, and I'm a terrible money person. But and it's also like poetry. I mean, I'm so used to not making money on poetry that I just, I just don't expect anything. More than the money, what I'm looking to do is to get maybe creative writing students at various universities to connect with specific prisons so that they can have a sustained relationship. And because it's hard for me, it's been a lot to do all the traveling and everything. It's been a lot, and I don't think I can maintain that indefinitely. But more important, it's not me getting there, because really once I get there, it's kind of get out of the way and let the poetry happen. So more important to me is that this is getting to the people who want it and need it so deeply. So I'm thinking. I mean, I'm up at night thinking about this.
And it was good to hear also that you go into women's prisons, because I was going to mention that oftentimes women who are incarcerated are the least remembered. We love the men, but we oftentimes
the women's prison in Louisiana flooded in 2016, and the women are still displaced. They are currently housed at what was a youth detention facility that was closed because it was so crap, okay? But that's where the women are in beds. Like if we were in the same bunk, we would be sleeping like this close together. And they're still waiting to move. So that's why I can't get back to them until September, because then they'll finally be in their new location after being displaced for 2016. And tragically, many of those women, instead of being transferred to prisons, there's only one women's prison. So women, especially if they're serving a long sentence, will be just kind of dispersed to jails where they're not having any type of support. And anyone can jump in on this if anyone wants to. Yeah?
I actually had 2 questions. One's for the whole table, which is what was the biggest surprise for you in doing this work? Sure, walking dancer. And the other question I had, forgive me that I've forgotten your name. Yes, Alex. Being a poet myself, I've often thought that part of what makes us poets, aside from our hypersensitivity, is also this permeability between us and the world, in which we may actually take in more stimuli than the average person. And having been someone who's had addiction touch my life so deeply, not personally, but with those that I love, and it seems like so many artists many artists end up in some form of addiction. I just wondered, in your journey of getting clean, what role you felt being a poet helped you in your healing journey, or if you feel that maybe this permeability between you and nature may have had some contribution to how you ended up in addiction, if you don't mind asking.
Should I go first and then we can go around to the other question? Yeah, I mean, initially what I was interested in as an artist when I was doing my undergrad was music, and the band that I was in played around with opioids, and it was pretty quickly I was strung out. And I think that artists are especially permeable, and I think that permeability is something that, you know, if you spend enough time with poetry, you realize it's all about attention, you know, and developing your poetic craft, you develop the ability to pay attention to yourself, your own cognition, your own cognitive patterns. And so poetry, I mean, does a lot of things, but it has taught me to notice, you know, myself and how I move through the world and how I make decisions, why I make them, and what decisions kind of spring up out of those decisions. So, absolutely, poetry is what got me off heroin and meth. I mean, being in prison, I mean, yeah, it's harder to get drugs, but the drugs are still there, you know. Yeah, I mean, I used to say that, like, for me, poems became, writing poems, but poems in particular, were like non-psychoactive, like candies. Like, they were like, they're safe, like safe drugs, I guess. So, yeah, I don't know if that helps. Okay. Yeah. What was the other question?
It was, what was the greatest surprise for each of you in going into bringing poetry into the prison system?
I did a lot of drugs in my 20s. I think what I've learned is, like, there's a difference between the personality of the artist and the role of the artist. And as I started to kind of meditate on that, I realized I was doing a lot of things for personality's sake. What I thought was, like, cool. What I thought other people did, which is a strange way to go after experience. Seek someone else's. Yeah, for me it had a lot to do with, like, finding that purpose or something. The thing I was most surprised about, I think I'm always just surprised about the ease of it. There's a kind of, it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of like before you get on stage, you're nervous. But once I'm here and I'm doing it, it's fine. And that's how it was. There's a certain mundanity that's beautiful there, I think, and that happens unexpectedly for me.
In my hand already. Yeah, I think for me the biggest surprise, honestly, was just the giant wave that goes from, like, the fear and the struggle to get in versus the ease once I'm actually in there teaching. To, like, riff off that, since Bernardo said the thing about yes, like, I keep thinking of Homer Simpson and Mr. Burns, and Homer saying the beauty of being a bad person is you have to do nothing, you know. And, you know, like, I'm very privileged and lucky. I think half my pickup game in Miami was in jail before I turned 18, and I'm just lucky and a little faster and maybe a little slicker, and that's why it wasn't me to so much of an extent. And every time we go in, including when me and you, Allison, were in East Baton Rouge last year, like, when the doors close, like, I have a moment of, like, fear. Like, I have a record. I wonder if the background check's gonna mess us up. You know, am I gonna, you know, smell like some drug that somebody next to me at the bar was smoking yesterday? Then the dogs aren't gonna let me in. You know, are they gonna just not let me out at this point because the judicial system is becoming more and more subjective since we sat down here today? and all those fears are huge. And then the second I sit down and I'm just, you know, able to be with these other writers, like it is just so easy and so sweet. And like, I'm not gonna bore you all with every lesson I've done in a jail and every volunteer I've done in a jail, but if I were to sit here, I could probably think of a writer from each one. I could think of what we talked about what we shared, about what we read, about where the poems went, because it was just so beautiful and easy to talk about writing once I got past the initial fear of having to get in and navigate the system.
Speaking of having trouble getting in and navigating the system, over the period of a few months, I was able to set up a poetry reading at Angola. This Thursday we went. I brought 8 poets, as well as 3 guests. And we were, I had a gate pass on stationery from the governor, which somebody must have stolen that off of his desk, but anyway. We were all set to go in with 8 poets, and one of our poets got stopped outside because, you know, first our cars got tossed at the gate, and then we go back, and then we get scanned again, and then they put us in a little closet with a fan with a dog on the other side of it, he smelled the slightest molecule of something on one of our poets, who ultimately wasn't able to go back. But even he stayed there and was doing poetry, only instead of doing it with the incarcerated population, he was doing poetry with the guards. Right. But that was, we were talking about our greatest reward, and pulling that off was the greatest reward. Because not only do I know it was absolutely joyful for the participants, the incarcerated participants, it was an absolute joy for me to have other poets with me, not as witness, or maybe it was as witness, but just to share the thing that I've tried so hard to articulate since I've been doing this work, which, I don't know if I like the word joy, but maybe that is the word. It's that dropping out of time and just being 100% focused on the thing, which for me is poetry.
Can I answer the question as well? So I think the biggest thing for me, the generosity and kindness and, you know, intelligence of these people in prison was not surprising to me because I've been in there and I've been with them. But what was surprising for me going into Angola was the difference between the similarity actually between being someone in prison and someone who's going in as a visitor. Because these systems dehumanize everyone that interact with them. You're marked by these systems if you have any kind of interaction with them. Tongo, the poet who was not allowed to go in, we were put into a kind of a confession booth.
Yeah.
And they close you in this box, and the booth next to you has a sniffing dog in it. And there's a guard looking through a window to see how this dog reacts to you. The dog is smelling you through a vent. I
never saw that dog.
We don't know if the dog was actually in there. Yeah. But look, it's dehumanizing the visitors, the people who live there. It's turning animals into machines. Like, these systems have to go, you know? So.
I'd seen your hand.
Yeah, so I just would love it if you could elaborate a little more on just why the red tape is so thick, and any more specific advice on getting in. Like you said at the beginning, you were naive, you can't just call the warden and ask. So how, if you want to start a program, any advice on just how to do that?
No, I don't know. Just keep trying and be open and talk about what you're doing, because when I started doing this, I had no idea that so many people in some way were interested or were helping in prisons. And also be open to working with a faith-based organization. That alarms me to some extent, because I wouldn't want anyone kept out of a program because of their faith. However, especially in Louisiana, faith-based organizations I've heard of people doing catfish frying on the campus of a prison and doing a retreat there with people from the outside and the inside. So that might be a way to get into the door. And my only other advice would be to, when you start, it won't be what you dream of. It's going to be like a little fraction of what you thought. And this kind of goes back to what Alex was saying, which is that the institution is just, they're kind of obsessed with being in power and in control. And so you can have things revoked from you at the last second. I'm sure that the incarcerated folks experience this on a day-to-day level. You know, when I was walking out from our event on Thursday, I was talking with the man named Cecil, and just having a delightful conversation. We were talking about the parole project, actually, and he was trying to ask me something, and I was listening very carefully so that I could figure out what he needed and tell him the answer the next time. And we got that conversation broken up by a guard who, I mean, he's an older gentleman, and the guard is a younger woman, and kind of broke it up in a not a disparaging manner, but it was just an obvious power play. So I didn't get to finish that conversation. I'm still gonna talk to Parole Project about what he needs to do or whatever, but just little things like that. So it's never gonna be 100% what you planned or anticipated. Yeah, it's time. Okay, I'm sorry, it's time. Thank you for being here. Stop me, I'll be here all day today and tomorrow. Please take a poster, please take some food, and thank you New Orleans Poetry Festival for everything you've done to make this possible. Thank you.